Hey guys, it's teacher Anya. We're going to be doing some reading today, and we're going to be reading a story about the railroads, okay? So our trains. So I want you to start by thinking about, have you ever ridden on a train? Yeah, you probably have, because in China there's a lot of trains everywhere, okay? Especially really modern trains like bullet trains. But what we're going to be talking about today are very old trains, okay? So these are trains from the 1940s and the 1950s in the United States. So there was a very big railroad culture around these trains when they were running. They had their own language, their own kind of special names for the trains and all kinds of little things. And a lot of little boys wanted to grow up and work on trains. That was really, really important to them. So what we're going to read today is the story of somebody remembering. So they're thinking back to when they were a little kid and they're thinking about these trains. So you need to try to put yourself in their shoes. So pretend that you're very, very, very old. Maybe you're shaky, okay? So you're very old. You're an old person, and you're thinking back to when you were very young, okay, on something that you loved. So how would you feel? Would you feel sad? Would you feel happy remembering these things? Think about how you would feel, okay? All right, so this man is pulling on the brake line of the train. This is how they used to stop the train in the old days. They would pull the brake line to plug, what they call plug the train, so stop the train. Okay, so the engineer is stopping the train. So the story is the last train, okay? And this is something kind of very important. The foreword here is by Arlo Guthrie. Arlo Guthrie was a very famous singer in the United States in the 1930s and the 1940s. He wrote a lot of protest songs, folk music songs. He traveled on the railroads a lot. So he's very familiar with what this life was like. So he wrote what's called a foreword, which is an introduction to the book. It tells us something about the book, okay? All right. Okay, so what do you see here? I see a family. So do you think this book is going to be about this family and how they work on trains? Yeah, probably, right? Okay, so let's see. It looks like both the grandfather and the dad both work on the train. So let's see what the little boy remembers about his dad and his grandfather working on these trains, okay? So the last train. Okay, this is an old-fashioned kind of watch. Okay, so they would wear it and they put it in their pocket. Okay, so this is called a, easy to remember, a pocket watch. Okay, and it would be on this special kind of a chain. In English, this is called a fob. And this chain goes from your watch to your belt. So it holds onto your pants. So you pull your watch out of your pocket and look at it. You don't wear it on your wrist. So this is a pocket watch. They don't really have these anymore. These are very old-fashioned. Okay, and you would wear it with a fob chain. This is called a fob in English, okay? There's going to be a lot of very fancy vocabulary in this story. What's important is not that you remember it or memorize it. What's important is that you enjoy hearing it and you enjoy learning it for the first time. You'll memorize it eventually. For now, just try to be like, oh, fob, that's really cool. That's a cool word. I didn't know that before. Okay, this story is full of language that is going to be very hard for you to understand. Okay, so teacher Anya will do her best to try to make the language understandable. Okay, so let's read the foreword. Remember, it's by Arlo Guthrie, that famous singer. Okay, The Last Train is a perfect song that captures the imagination of anyone who has stood along the railroad tracks in some little American town. Okay, so you haven't done that. because you don't live in America. So you have to really kind of work hard to imagine what this might be like, okay? So you can think about the railroad tracks in your town in Wuhan. Try to think about what it's like to stand next to a railroad track or to stand next to a train, okay? All right, so we're gonna look at what this is, okay? Okay, this is an old train station. We can see here, it's got some boards across the windows. So do you think the windows are broken? Do you think anyone uses this train station anymore? No, right? Okay, so this little boy is here. Okay, and he's thinking about what this train station used to be like, okay? Okay, let's read here. There's a little railroad station in the center of our town. The windows boarded up, the roof is falling down. Okay, so here's the railroad station. And then he tells us, right, the windows boarded up. Okay, so they have boards across them. In English, we call this boarded up. And the roof is falling down. Okay, so the roof is falling in. All right, so let's keep reading about this little station. Wow, look at all the weeds that are growing here. Okay, so here's a big train. Okay, old-fashioned train. They don't use these kind of trains anymore. Okay, so these were powered by coal. So they were very dirty and they made this very heavy black smoke. Okay, so this is a coal-powered train. This little thing on the front here that you see that looks like a fence, this is called a cattle pusher, and it's to push cows out of the way that might be standing in front of the train. So it gets them out of the way of the train. It kills them, but it gets them off the track so the train can go forward safely. So they call this a cattle pusher in English. Okay. All right, so there's a big moon. There's a little tiny town. In the United States, you'll often know that something is a small town when you see a church with this big pointy thing. In English, we call this a steeple. Okay, so you'll see this, and then this is a water tower. Okay, in small towns in the United States, both of these things are very common. So when you see them in stories, you know that you are looking at a small town when you see a church with a steeple and a water tower, okay? So let's keep reading. Okay, if you close your eyes and listen, you can almost hear the sound of those big iron horses rolling into town. Okay, what's an iron horse? Is it a horse made of metal? No, an iron horse is a train. Okay, so it's a very old word for train. When trains were first invented, when they were first created, they called them iron horses. Okay, so an iron horse is a train, and it's gonna roll into town, right? Okay, so if I close my eyes, I can almost remember the sound of these trains coming into the town, right? Okay, let's read this again together one more time together. Okay, ready? If you close your eyes and listen, you can almost hear the sound of those big iron horses rolling into town. Okay? This book rhymes, right? Sound and town rhyme. Okay, so this is, it's actually the lyrics of a song. So it's a song that they've turned into a book. Okay, so let's learn about his family. He's going to tell us about his family here, okay? So let's read with Teacher Anya. My granddad was a railroad man. He drove the trains around, okay? So his grandfather drove trains. In English, we call somebody who has this job the engineer, okay? He's the train engineer, okay? My daddy, he sold tickets till they closed the station down. Okay, so his grandfather was the train's engineer, and his dad sold the tickets for the train. So did they both work on the railroad? Yes, they did. Okay. All right. And he sold tickets till they closed the station down. So Remember in the beginning of the story, we look at that station that's all boarded up and like creepy, right? So that's where his dad worked when he was young. Okay. All right. So let's read this paragraph again. Ready? My granddad was a railroad man. He drove the trains around. My daddy, he sold tickets till they closed the station down. Okay. Here's a big close up of a train. Okay, so there's somebody driving a train. So is that his dad or his granddad? Yeah, it's his granddad. Very good. Okay, because his granddad was the engineer. He drove the trains. Okay, so this is his grandfather driving the train. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, this is a water tower. So when the trains would come by, they would drop this onto the train and fill it for steam engines. Okay, and these are all the tracks, okay, that the train would go on. All right, let's read together. Now the tracks that shone like silver have turned to rusty brown. 30 years ago, the last train rolled through town. Okay, so does anybody use these railroad tracks anymore? Are they used? No. Did they used to be very shiny like silver? Yeah, so they've gotten old, so they're rusty. So rusty turns things like orange. Okay, so when metal is very old, when steel is very old, it gets rusty, it turns orange. So you can see here the color of these tracks, they're kind of orangey, so they've rusted. Okay, all right, let's read the sentences again together. Ready? Now the tracks that shone like silver have turned to rusty brown. 30 years ago, the last train rolled through town. Okay, good. All right, so he's walking here in his memory. Okay, so all the train tracks are covered in flowers. So nobody uses these anymore. Okay, it's been a long time since any train used these tracks. Okay, here's a newer train. Okay, so now he's kind of in the present day. He's with us right now in real time. Okay, so he's on a train. I'm riding on the city of New Orleans. Okay, that's the name of a train. In the United States, train names are really kind of funny. So sometimes they're named after cities, sometimes they have really crazy names, but train names in the United States are often named after the places where they go or very old kind of historical names, right? Okay, so he's riding on the city of New Orleans. That's this train right here. So he's on this train thinking about the old trains. Thinking about means about, okay? The Wabash Cannonball. Wabash Cannonball is another train name. So remember we said these names are really funny. That's an old funny name of a train, okay? So he's sitting on one train and he's thinking about another train, okay? So I'm riding on the city of New Orleans, thinking about the Wabash Cannonball. Okay, so he's on a train thinking about another train. Okay, here's the city of New Orleans here. Okay, this is a steam train. You can see all the steam coming off the bottom here. Okay, and here he is. So he's in his dreams, right? He's thinking about this in his dreams. Okay, it's nighttime. Oh, Midnight Flyer. Midnight Flyer is another name of a kind of train in the United States, okay? So here's the Midnight Flyer. Midnight Flyer is a cargo train, so it hauls people and things. It's a very famous train in the United States. Okay, thinking about the Midnight Flyer, hear that lonesome freight train whistle call. Okay, so sometimes at night you hear the trains, right? And you hear their whistle noise. They go like woo, woo. They're very far away. So it's a very lonely sound because a lot of times trains go places where there are no people, okay? Or the people are very, very far away and they can just barely hear the train sound, okay? Old cigar box filled with memories, my boyhood souvenirs. Okay, so there's a lot of complex words here, so let's look at them. Old cigar box in the United States, a cigar is like a big cigarette. Okay, so oftentimes you would keep things that you liked in a cigar box because they're small, so they're a nice place to keep things. Okay, it's filled with memories. Okay, my boyhood souvenirs. So a souvenir is something that helps us remember a place. Okay, so a souvenir is something that helps us remember a place. So a photograph, a photo is a souvenir. Okay, a ticket might be a souvenir. All right, a brochure might be a souvenir. So there's a lot of things here that help us remember what something was like. Okay, so when you visit someplace, when you're a tourist, you buy a lot of souvenirs to help you remember that place. Okay. All right, let's read this again. Old cigar box filled with memories, my boyhood souvenirs. Souvenirs, okay? So there's a lot of things in here, okay? There's a model train. There's a ticket punch for clipping your ticket, right? Okay, so Overland is the name of the cigar box, okay? So let's see what's inside of this box. He's going to talk about what's inside the box now, okay? The watch they gave my daddy when he'd put in 20 years. So when his dad had worked for the train company for 20 years, they gave him a watch. Okay, that's that watch that we see at the beginning of the story, remember? And it's on this fancy chain called a fob. Okay, so that's the watch. So his dad got a watch as a present from the train company when he worked there for 20 years. Okay. Okay, this is a fun thing to do. Teacher Anya used to do this when she was a kid, to put coins on the track, and then the train comes and runs them over and squishes them really flat. So they get very, very big and very flat. Okay, so you could put a Mao on the train tracks and it would like become very flat like a pancake, right? Okay, so he probably has some of these coins, okay? Now the flattened copper pennies look like little metal tears. They look like tears that a railroad cries before it disappears. So he's telling us that these coins in his mind look like the railroad is crying because nobody uses the railroad anymore. Okay, so it's disappearing. So it's a very beautiful image to make these coins turn into tears. So he's saying that it looks like the railroad is crying these tears that are really these pennies, right? Okay, let's read the sentence again one more time. Now the flattened copper pennies look like little metal tears that a railroad cries before it disappears, before it goes away forever. Okay. A ticket punch that clicked 1,000,000 snowflakes every year. Okay, so here's a ticket punch. And what you do is you have a piece of paper and the ticket, it's a ticket, right? So we want to show that the ticket has been used. So what they would do is they would take a punch and they would punch it and it would make a tiny piece of paper, okay? So what he's saying here is that these pieces of paper look like snowflakes because they're very small and they fly all over the ground, okay? So he's telling us that in this box of souvenirs is a ticket punch, and the ticket punch punched so much paper that it looked like snow, okay? So a ticket punch that clicked 1,000,000 snowflakes every year. Okay, here's the next thing in the box. The faded union dues card of a railroad engineer. A union is an organization for workers. Okay, you don't have them in China. Okay, think about it as like a collective. So it's an organization for workers and it fights for workers' rights. Okay, and in turn, the workers pay a fee. Okay, so the workers pay a fee to belong to the union. Okay, so the union dues card tells the member of the union how much money they're going to owe that year. Okay, or it shows that they've paid their dues, that they belong to the union. Okay, so railroad workers in the United States have a very big union. It's very powerful and very strong. Lots of people. Okay, so in this box is a faded. Faded means that it's not new. It's old and it's kind of like dull looking. Okay, so it looks old. The faded union dues card of a railroad engineer. Okay, so the railroad engineer again is his grandfather. So there's his picture. It says dues are $4. Okay, so he's paid the dues. He's gotten his card that shows that he belongs to the union. Okay, all right. These are different pictures of trains, pictures of people with trains. Okay, different names of railroads. This is the Great Northern Railway. This goes to Alaska. All right, great. All right, let's read together. So each item marks a chapter in a story we hold dear, okay, in a story that means a lot to us. Sweet memories of a railroad man's career. Okay, a career is when we work for a company for a long time. We have a career. It's what we do with our lives as adults. Okay, so you might have a career as a doctor. You might have a career as an engineer. You might have a career as on a worker on the railroad. Okay, so every single thing in this box tells the story of someone's life on the railroad. Okay, let's read this again together. Each item marks a chapter in a story we hold dear. Sweet memories of a railroad man's career. Okay. Okay, these are the different jobs of all the people that work on the train, okay? Oh, the brakeman with his oil can. The brakeman makes sure that the brakes, what stops the train, works well. So he is the person who will stop the train if something happens, okay? So the brakeman with his oil can, okay? The porter dressed in white. Porters had a very good job on the train. They helped the passengers. So they would always take their bags and put them away. They would serve them food. They would clean up after them. And porters in the United States during this time were always Black. This was a Black person's job. Okay, it was considered a very good job. They got paid really well. So a lot of people wanted to be porters. Okay, so they always wore white and they were always Black, African Americans. Okay. Okay. The fireman. Okay, is he actually a fireman? No, his job is to run the engine of the train. So he's going to put coal in the engine and it burns the coal and it makes the energy to power the train. Okay, to make the train go. The fireman with his shovel full of jet black anthracite. Anthracite is another word. It's actually the geological name for coal. Okay, so anthracite is coal. And I'll write for you how to say this. Okay, so anthracite is coal. Okay, so this guy's job is to shovel the coal into the engine and it burns. Okay, and he's called a fireman because he makes a fire with the coal, not because he's a firefighter. Okay, all right, so let's read this sentence again because it has a crazy word in it. Okay, the fireman with his shovel full of jet black anthracite. Anthracite. All these people, okay, are what? Gone now like a dream that slowly faded into the night. are the faces of this once familiar sight. So familiar means we saw it a lot, okay? So if you go to your grandmother's house, your grandmother is very familiar to you. You're used to seeing her, okay? So a long time ago, these people on these trains were very familiar to us. We saw them every time we traveled. Now we don't see them at all anymore, okay? All right, let's read this together. Gone now like a dream that slowly faded in the night are the faces of this once familiar sight. Okay, good. Let's keep going. Okay, here's more trains. Okay, more trains. These are getting more modern, right? This one's called the Burlington route. It goes from Burlington, Vermont, which is a state in the United States, okay, on the East Coast. Okay, and now what do we use? Do we use trains anymore, or do we use airplanes, right? Okay. Oh, the steam gave way to diesel. Diesel is a kind of gas. And electric powered trains. Now the rails look up at contrails. Contrails are these lines that airplanes make behind them. Okay, it's the vapor from the fuel that they're burning. It turns into these lines, and these lines are called contrails. Okay, from jet-powered airplanes. Okay, so it's talking about we used to use steam, then we used diesel, which is a kind of gas. Then our trains became electric-powered. Now we have bullet trains that are maglev, right? So they run on magnets. Okay, and now we have airplanes that are jet-powered. They use jet engines. Okay, so we've advanced in how we travel. Okay, let's read this again. Oh, the steam gave way to diesel and electric-powered trains. Now the rails look up at contrails from jet-powered airplanes. So if we're standing on the rails, we're looking up and we're saying, there's an airplane. Okay. A blast of steam, the whistle screamed its mournful last refrains. Refrains is the end of a song. Okay, so a refrain is the end of a song. Okay, so its last, mournful means sad. Okay, so mournful means sad. Okay, so a blast of steam, the whistle scream, woo, woo, its mournful last refrain. So the sad ending of its song. Long silent, though its echo still remains. Okay, so even though we haven't heard it in a long time, we can still imagine that we can hear the echo of the whistle of the train, right, from a long time ago. Okay, so he's looking at his watch and he's thinking about his grandfather, right? Okay, good. Very nice job reading this story. This is a very, very, very long and hard story in English, okay? So this part here at the end, the author is telling us about his own memories of his family working on the train. So you can read that with your mom or dad if you want, okay? So nice job reading our train story today. There's a lot of words here that are complex and that you may not understand. So read this a few times with your mom and dad. Have them help you understand the words a little bit better, okay? These are very old-fashioned words. A lot of them are very American words, so you wouldn't necessarily be familiar with them, but try your best to understand the story, okay? The story is a little boy remembering his family working on the railroad. That's what it is, okay? So as long as you understand that, the other words will come slowly, okay? All right, nice job reading today. I'm very proud of you. This was a hard story to read, okay? And I'll see you next time for more English, all right? Bye-bye, say Jen.